Happy Self-Love Sunday. I am Tarnissha Sass, your host of Self-Love Sundays with Sass, where we come every single Sunday to talk about all the ways in which we can better our best. And let me tell you, this week is going to be a little bit different, y'all, because I watched this Netflix series called The Polygamist. And at first I was just like curious about it because, I heard all these things about it, but then I started to watch it a little bit differently. And because I wasn't watching to see who ended up with who, I was not waiting for the dramatic twist because you kind of saw in the beginning, but I watched it differently because I was like asking myself, like, what is this actually teaching us about people? Because while the characters in the story may be fictional, everything, and I mean everything they were dealing with was real. The lust, the betrayal, the vengeance, the childhood trauma, rejection, perfectionism, and the secrets that families have are all so rarely real. And the consequences of all those things are playing out in homes, marriages, and families every single day. And I wanted to come and talk about that because I think it's so important for us to recognize some of those things, because a way to better our best is to look at some of the structures that we are in, some of the systems that we are in, because we are in structures and systems, whether we know it or believe it or not. And it's most times it's based off of, family and past history. Even those of us who say, yes, we're changing the game, we're changing the way we parent, we're changing the way we think. There are still some things that happened before we got to this point, if we're going to be real today, that we had to work through. So what stayed with me long after the series ended was the patterns. Every single character believed, if you like it was like they believed they were solving a problem, but almost every decision made a bigger problem. And it was is exactly what happens when we refuse to deal and or heal, I want to say, with the conditions of our hearts. We become so focused on managing the situation in front of us that we never stop to ask whether we are becoming the kind of person that we actually despise, whether we are becoming the person God actually even called us to be. So today I want to talk through 7 things that this show taught me. And I'm not talking about polygamy at all. I know that in some cultures, this is a very normal practice. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the people, about the families, about what happens when pain goes unaddressed and cycles go unchallenged. I believe someone watching this today needs every single one of these lessons. And even if you don't feel that one of these are for you, please like, share, and subscribe. I want you to know that the biggest form of support that you could ever give someone is to share this knowledge, because knowledge is indeed power when you put action behind it. And so I really want to get into this today. And the number one thing was vengeance. Vengeance never stays with the person you're trying to hurt. The first thing that it really stuck out to me, because when we take vengeance in our own hands, you're thinking that it's just going to do something to the person, never realizing how it can actually ruin the people closest to you. So when you think about the wife, Joyce, her pain was definitely understandable. At the end of the day, she was the most innocent one in all of it, because she had no idea when she went to marry this man, the type of man he was even, he even was, right? She had every reason to feel betrayed, to be angry. No one watching this series could look at what her husband did and tell her that she didn't have the right to feel everything that she was feeling. Real talk. Like, we've been there before. I mean, I don't want to say we. This is a vast majority of the world, and there are lots of people watching, and not everybody has gone through this. And this is my disclaimer. This is not for those of you who haven't gone through anything, or I'm not saying that it has to be you. However, come in. If you feel it, I'm just saying you may want to look at some things. The problem was never that she experienced those emotions. The problem was what she chose to do with them. This is the important part. Instead of stepping back and really walking through her own healing, whatever that would have took for her, whether it was going to therapy for herself, whether it was, talking to getting into communities that could help her, getting a mentor, getting a coach, a therapist, whatever it is it would need, in allowing God, I'm going to give my disclaimer. Okay, I'm not here to tell you who and what to believe in. However, comma, and I believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Don't miss the message because you're trying to tie the messenger. Okay, whoever you call your God, I'm not here to tell you that. But allowing God to deal with that situation, she took matters into her own hands. And one decision led to another and another. And because a lot of times we want to get into this place where we're at the end and we're calling this person all sorts of things, not realizing that the choices that we made kept tying us to this person. And I'll get into that in a minute. But before long, the entire family was living with the consequences and choices that were made from a place of revenge instead of forgiveness and healing. And let me talk about forgiveness. And I'm not going to get into this really long right now. But forgiveness is never about the other person. Forgiveness is about setting yourself free, letting yourself be free from the pain, the hurt, the trauma, and the drama that you once lived in. No longer living in a prison with that person, because when you hold on to bitterness and unforgiveness, you're tied to that person for the rest of your life. Okay? And I'm going to tell you what really broke my heart. Her actions, and I know that subconsciously she really wasn't thinking this, but her actions set in motion a chain of events that actually reached her own son. And let me tell you something that I know about a mother, a good mother. Let me say that. And I'm not here to define good or bad in somebody else's eyes. I'm just talking about how I see it. A good mother who wants her children to have better than her, who wants them to be better than everything, to actually expose them to things that can make them successful and happy. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about abundance of joy, peace, love, all the things, right? Who wants to expose them to a spiritual and firm foundation. The one thing that she never wants to do is hurt her children. But that's the very thing she did when she sought out her own revenge, because if you watched it, when she first got in trouble behind, her husband, and she was in prison. She met a lady in jail who was in jail because she was upset somebody had given her HIV. And what she did was she hired that same woman because she knew that her husband was suffering from a spirit of lust. And I want you to hear my words: suffering from a spirit of lust, that he would go after anything, because at this point he was no longer in charge of himself. His flesh was. And now he was being led by his flesh, being led by that spirit. And so the same young woman, his father had become intimate with, his son, actually. And this is not the woman who gave him the HIV. This is the woman that, the young woman that he ended up messing with, that his son actually, loved and wanted to be with. She ended up with his father. And because she was sleeping with him during the time that he was exposed, now, because his son, and we're going to get into his son in a minute, slept with that same young girl. Now he is now exposed to HIV. Now let me tell you something. We're not dealing with Magic Johnson and Cookie. Okay, I understand that Magic Johnson have gone through some things, and he is still living. We're not dealing with that. Okay. We're dealing with the fact that his mother hired someone to really avenge her, to kill the father. And now, because she took vengeance in her own hands, she has now exposed her son. And here's the thing: Joyce never saw it coming. She was so focused on hurting her husband, she never stopped to think about who else would eventually be caught in the crossfires. And I'm going to give some biblical reference here. And again, you got to go to your own biblical reference for this, but this is why this is so important. Romans 12:19, and this is from the NIV portion of the Bible. It says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is not mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord." God doesn't say this because he doesn't care about justice. He says it because he can see every consequence. We cannot. You cannot possibly see some of the ripple effect of the things that you do when you take vengeance in your own hands. I've seen this time and time again, where mothers, because they were hurt by the fathers, kept the children from the father. And again, ended up in the long run thinking she's protecting her children, ended up hurting them. Because in the long run, I'm going to say this, and this is My firm foundation of belief, it does not have to be yours, but I believe that children need both their mother and their father in their lives. There are things that as a woman, I cannot teach my son. I'm not even going to pretend that I could. I cannot teach him how to be something my DNA structure didn't give me, and that is to be a man. I can't give him that. Now, I may not be happy, and some women may not be happy with the type of a man that his father is, or the character of the man. So there are other things that you can do, like get him in the mentoring program and things like that. There are things that you can do, but I do believe that children need both the female and male in their lives. Okay. And so the thing about God is he can see everything. We see the person who hurt us. God sees, guess what? We see the person who hurt us, which is that man. God sees our children. He sees the generations that's going to come even after this. God sees the ripple effect of every single decision that we make in our own anger. So when you take vengeance into your hand, you say, I'm going to get him back. I'm going to get her back. Right. So the man starts trying to get the woman back by not helping with his children, not paying child support. They go through these things where she's going to spend the money on herself. Let me tell you something. I think that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why? Because when I hear people say that, I know that they've never raised a child on their own, because I have, honey, and these kids is expensive. All right. And so it's just all these things we start to feed ourselves because of whatever we're being fed in our minds. And so now we're taking vengeance in our own hands, never realizing that all everyone doing is hurting our children. And let me tell you something about hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And this is how our children begin to grow up and hurt people. We're going to get into that, because one act of vengeance does not stay with the person. I'm telling you, it has a way of becoming everyone else's burden, because look what happened in the end. He ended up getting sick because he had done messed around on his wife, had the lady from his job he had the twins with. Now he's with this young girl. And let me tell you something, the ripple effect he ended up being sick. She ended up dumping him back to his wife, saying, this is your problem. So now he's suffering in the end. You're still thinking about vengeance and how you can get his money, so you bring him back in your house. But now everybody's responsible. Your kids are watching their father die. It is so much happening in this situation, and everybody's thinking, oh, he's just getting his, not realizing that everybody's getting something. Everybody's getting something. And it leads me to my second thing. What you despise but never heal, you eventually become. This is a good lesson, because the show taught me this about how it's really such an important conversation that every family in our community, we're not having, and we should. What we despise and you never heal, you eventually become. The son despised his father. He hated the way he treated his mother. He hated the way he treated women. He hated the way he treated his business. He hated the way he despised everything about the father, how he was. Even though it was slightly odd for the son, because you could tell a certain part he envied his dad. He knew his dad had built them from nothing. And here's the thing of the truth about the father. The reason why the father became what he became is because he despised his father. So sometimes, oh, this is so good. Sometimes we become that very thing, but because we may do it a little bit better. We may earn a little bit more money. Okay. We're able to take care of things a little bit better. We think that we're not the same. Honey, he was exactly the same. He hated watching his mother being humiliated and his family destroyed, because he grew up with a front row seat to everything a man should never do. And he made this decision in his heart that he would never be that person. If you think about Mumsy, when he was like, I'm not going to be that. But because he walked in the club that day, being in an environment that he should not have been in, being around somebody who never meant him any good, he was never really his friend. He only stuck around him because he knew the truth about his father and his family, because this was what's her name, Effie's son, Essie's son. Right. So their whole family was that's a whole other thing. How they were just lying and keeping secrets. Right. So he was around him, had no business in a place, because Mumsy he wasn't even a kid that was about strippers, but he saw his father interact with a woman that he loved. And because, again, No, he never dealt with it, never, because he was a kid, right? Never even talked about what he saw. He followed right in he took that hurt and now he became his father. And now, because of the choice that he made, is going to cost him his life the same way it cost the father. See, sometimes we don't understand that the very thing we do, because we see it all the time. Well, listen, how many people said, I'm not going to be like my mother, and then discover a year later that they handle conflict in men and their children the exact same way. But maybe you don't see it because you did things a little bit better. I'm going to talk about me for a second. I used to always be like, I ain't never going to be like my mother. I hated the way she treated me. We had our own drama growing up, and and all those things. And then when I got older and I got children, now here's the thing. I thought I did a little bit better. Why? Because I was always there for my kids. Their sporting events, I'm always showing up. I'm in their corner. I'm rah. I'm doing all these things, never realizing, though, there were traits of her that I hated that showed up in me. It showed up in the way that I parented. And I had to not only repent for those things, I had to apologize to my children, because I didn't heal it. I became the very thing. How many men say, I will not be like my father? And then realize only they're carrying the same anger, emotional distance, and destructive patterns. They treating women the same way their father treated their mother. Oh, but because they think they're doing a little bit better, maybe they're spending more time with their children than their father did with them, or maybe they're paying child support and their father didn't with them. They think they're doing it slightly a little bit better, only to realize outside looking in, when they've destroyed or dismantled so many women and so many lives and so many families, to understand they are the exact same. But sometimes they don't even realize it until it's too late, and they're at their old age and they're still alone and by themselves. There are so many older single men left to their own recognizance and not realizing the reason is because they never dealt with the hurt, the trauma, and the drama that was dished out to them, their father wounds, their mother wounds. They never got healing for it. So all they did was live in that, fester in that, and that's why they created the life that they're creating. And it's the same for women. I'm not on any side. I'm just saying that what happens is, most often, because we despise a thing, we despise a person, more 9 times out of 10 you become that. Now, I'm not saying that this is everybody, because I know this is a vast world that we live in, and everybody's going to see you and they're going to say, I'm nothing like my father, nothing like him. Dig a little deeper, honey. Dig a little deeper. I had to go to therapy, and I was like, wow. I had to realize there were some patterns and some traces there of the very things that I hated. Okay. Because what you don't heal will reveal the hurt, pain, and trauma within yourself. And so the problem is not recognizing what was wrong and how we were raised. The problem is believing that the recognition alone produces healing. It does not. Just because you recognize that your father was a terrible person, the way he treated your mother, maybe he mentally or verbally abused her or hit her or any of those things, or had children on her, all those things, or created children all over the place, whatever that destructive pattern was. Or maybe you watched your mother be promiscuous, men out the house, or she was really mean and just angry and hateful. Whatever that is one thing to recognize it, just like within ourselves. It's one thing to be self-aware. It's a total another thing, though, to actually walk out that healing. Just recognizing does nothing. Healing requires acknowledgement, yeah, but it also requires accountability. It requires inviting God into that space we spent years pretending don't hurt anymore. They don't hurt me. They don't bother me. It's a lie. You can tell in the patterns that you're choosing. Okay. That say, so many emotionally unavailable men, and they don't know why they're locked into their jobs and their money, trying to prove something, to prove that they're not who their father's words, to prove who they're not, who their mother said their words. And in the end, guess what they do? Okay. And here's the thing. You spend years pretending that don't hurt you, instead of realizing that it does, and knowing that emotion is okay, to understand that it did, right? But also it requires therapy. I know we don't want to hear it, but some of those things require you to sit with a therapist, sit with a counselor, sit across with somebody that can help you untangle what years of living in a dysfunctional, broken environment did to you. And I don't want to act like there's no perfect family. We all have some sort of form of dysfunction. And what I'm going to say to you, just like with Mumsy and just like those younger kids in the story of the polygamist, what happened to you when you were young was not your fault. And it's your responsibility to heal it now that you're older. You can't keep running around here, keep hurting people over and over again. Your avoidance, all these things, your avoidance, your anxiety, your anger, your bitterness. Is killing the very thing that you want, because most people want love and want to leave a legacy of wealth, of joy, peace, abundance, and finances. And you can't get there because guess what? You're so busy running around and hurting people. You're just creating all these little mini families over everywhere. You're trying to get ahead financially and you can't because your money's locked up in child support. You're killing your own legacy. Okay? And again, Ephesians 4:31-32 NIV version tell us to get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger, and forgive one another as Christ forgave us. And let's not pretend that none of us. The reason why I'm able to give grace is because I needed it. And again, this forgiveness, forgive one another as Christ forgives us. Forgiveness for me has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the fact that I desire to secure my legacy. And I am not going to secure my legacy if I have bitterness, unresolved trauma, drama, and dysfunction still rising up in me. And I'm not perfect. So you're going to work through this probably throughout your life. You will never stop growing and learning until the day you go into the ground. Okay. And when you choose that, some people don't choose it. And so I call them the living dead. They never grow past where they are. They keep sitting in the same cycle over and over again. Woe is me. It's happening to me. Oh my God, this is me. Everything is bad. The Eeyore of the group. Everything is bad, and never seeing how their choices got them to that space. They're choosing to sit in the same environment with the same people, saying the same language over and over again. But I want to finish that scripture. It says Ephesians 4:31-32 tells us to get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger, and to give one another as Christ forgave us. And that's from my believers. Not because a person who hurt us deserves it, but because bitterness doesn't stay contained. It changes you from the inside until one day you look in that mirror and you see the very person you spent your life trying not to become. Time does not heal all wounds. It's what you do with that time. Are you going to get your therapy? Are you going to counseling? Are you joining groups? Grief is another one. Grief is another one. It's what you do with that time. Okay. And so the next lesson, because the first thing we talked about, I told you, was 7 things: taking vengeance in your own hands. And the second thing was when you despise something that you don't heal, eventually you become that very thing. The next thing, lust and greed will always cost you more than you plan to pay. Okay. And perfectionism will keep you bound longer than you should have. I'm telling you, and they belong together because in this story, they're working side by side, right? The father's lust cost him everything: his marriage, his children, his reputation, his business, the respect of anybody who once admired him. And it wasn't about the polygamy, it was about the way he handled it, right? One unchecked appetite fed over time slowly dismantled everything he spent years building. He never checked his flesh. He never checked his character. He wasn't a man of integrity. He never checked himself. James 1:14-5 says that each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire. And then desire gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. That ain't no poem, okay? That's exactly what happened in this series. But lust wasn't working by itself, because see, it went side by side with greed, because he got greedy. He got greedy. It wasn't just the lust. He got greed. I gotta have it all. But there was another form of greed too. The mistress, oh my God, believed she was stepping into a life of luxury. See, this is what happens when we want somebody else's life, not knowing what's behind door number 1 and 2. Okay. Sometimes you want somebody else's husband. You want what you think that they have. She ain't stopped to think about what cheating with the married man would do to his wife or his children, because all she could see was what she thought she was gaining. And what did she actually gain? She found herself rejected, abused, used, ignored, and abandoned, especially after she gave birth to those twins. But that's how sin works every single time. It advertises the reward, but hides the cost. I'm going to say it again. When you look at you wanting somebody else's life, even on social media, even when you're watching, it advertises the reward. It shows you all the beautiful things, the beautiful homes, the cars, the this, the that. It hides the cost of what they had to go through to attain what they had to attain. And I'm telling you, if some of you knew the cost of what people had to endure to get to where they were, you would not want their life. You wouldn't want it. And then there was Joyce. Because although she had a reason, I want you to watch Joyce though, because this is the part I want every woman watching it to really hear. In the beginning, she wanted to fight for her family. She just was a wife that wasn't willing to give up on her husband. He did this thing. I'm willing to forgive. But somewhere along the way, the fight changed. It stopped being about her marriage and her family, and it started becoming about her image. It became about what people would think. It became about appearances and reputation and protecting a version of herself that the public had come to admire. And because of that, she stayed longer than she should have. And let me tell you something about a lust and a greed in a man. You want to know how did he get to the place where he now was abusing them and hitting him? Because that spirit took over. He was sleeping with more and more women. So a lot of times that spirit that's on them gets on them. You think that anger and that power trip that he was on wasn't going to eventually turn into him hitting them? Of course it was. This is what happens when those things go unchecked and you decide to stay. The first time, listen, the first time, shame on you. Second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, shame on me. And I understand the covenant of marriage. No, I'm not telling anybody to leave their marriage. What I'm saying to you is when these things happen, you know what they didn't do? They didn't go to counseling. She didn't go get no help for herself. And maybe if she did, she would have realized that this wasn't the marriage. This wasn't the man that she actually married. This wasn't the man that she had come to love. Maybe she would have realized that this man had used her all along because she came from money and he wanted fame and wealth so bad because he despised his father and his upbringing. So he used her to help him get to where she needed to be. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's because especially when you want to keep your children with their father and you want your family structure, but she lost it along the way. She tolerated what she should have never tolerated, not because of love, but because she was afraid of what people would say if she left. How many people stay in situations and places long after the time has passed because you are afraid of what people were going to think? I'm going to tell you something honestly. I lived that out. I lived that out. I lived that out. But guess what the truth is? They was going to talk anyway. They're going to talk anyway because that's what people do. People stay peopling. You can't live your life for people. Proverbs 29 and 25 says, the fear of man will prove to be a snare. Perfectionism is not about excellence. Sometimes perfectionism that people have is about fear. Sometimes it's about protecting an image God never asked you to maintain. And the price of staying in something you should have walked away from just to save face is higher than the price of simply telling the truth. Sometimes you got to tell the truth and shame the devil. This didn't work and it's not for me. I don't have to sit across and dog that man. I don't really live in that thing. I don't have to sit across and call somebody a bunch of names and all that. No, I'm going to get on. Okay, I'm going to get on and get into me. I'm not spending my time and wasting my energy dogging somebody out that I don't need to. I'm going to let God handle that for me. Okay. And so the next thing, stop envying someone else's life because you don't know the full story. Every secret will eventually come to life. Let me tell you something, the truth. Okay, what's hidden in the dark will eventually come to light. It has no other choice. That's why I understand why people run around here being of it, lacking integrity, lying. If you want to be with other people, go be with other people. I can't. You know the thing that drives me crazy about people, and again, this is not judgment. This is observation because I've lived some things and I've done some things. I had to realize that I wasn't a grown woman, no. I was running around here a grown little girl because I couldn't speak the truth. The truth of the matter is, if you're grown up, you talking about you a man, look that woman in the eye and say, listen, I want to be with other women, or this is what I did. Don't tell me you grown and you still got to run around like a little kid, like you was when you was little, running from your mother, hiding the line. I had to learn that about myself. Oh, you's a little girl. Because if you grown enough to do it, you need to be grown enough to say it. Oh, you're not really grown in these streets. You are a pretender. You are a pretender. Okay. And so, but the other thing was the daughter Sophia, right? Was Essie's daughter. She wanted so desperately to have the life that she believed her sister had with their father. She wanted to be chosen to feel like she belonged. And I get that as a kid. Of course you do. But that need drove her to try to steal. First of all, she stole the sister's phones because she wanted a phone. Then tried to steal her boyfriend because she wanted to hurt the sister who she believed had everything that she deserved. So she spent so much time envying a relationship that she didn't understand. And she was blinded herself to the truth about who her biological father really was. She thought he was just some great man that treated these kids that live in his house so well. Sometimes the kids that live in the house don't have it as well as you think they have it. Okay. And when she finally got what she wanted, when all the things hit the fan, the truth about her father came to light, and now the kids wasn't no longer a secret. Let me tell you something. It wasn't a fairy tale she imagined in her mind. Comparison has a way of editing reality. We see what we want to see. We fill in the blanks with what we wish we were true. And we do that sometimes even in our relationships. Okay. We see, because I know I could do it. You see the good in people. So you're so busy focusing on the good of who they can be, you don't see who they really are. And then we envy lies we don't understand, and we make decisions that damage people around us in pursuit of something that was never going to be what we thought it was. Exodus 20:17 warns us not to covet what belongs to someone else. And it is not just a moral instruction, it's a protective one. The life you are wishing you had may be carrying burdens you could never imagine. I tell people all the time too, when it comes to me, don't wish you had my life. I had to bury two sons to get here. I went through a divorce to get here. I have an older son who decided not to speak to me to get here. I go through stress and strife sometimes that people couldn't even imagine to get here, to get to this place. You don't want somebody else. You want what was for you, because what's for you is beautiful. Believe that. Believe that. And connected to all this reality that every secret in this story eventually surfaced. Every hidden relationship came like, that's why you ain't got to go out crazy. It's going to come out. Every compromise eventually demanded payment. Every compromise demanded payment. Every woman that compromised, guess what? They compromised by living in lies and secret. It demanded payment because he came around for that payment. Okay. And then Lord knows who else was exposed to whatever that he had. Okay. Every secret demanded payment. Okay. And so Luke 12:2 says there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. Stop thinking that you're getting over on people. It all is going to come to light. You may be able to hide the truth for a season. And sometimes the season be 2 or 3 years. I ain't gonna lie. But you can't hide it forever. And the longer you carry secrecy, the heavier it gets. This is why I say more people live in such mental prisons. This is why you can't keep a relationship. This is why you can't hold a friendship. This is why you don't think, and it's so funny. Oh, everybody just wants me for my money. You lead with it, dear. You lead with it. And then when you find somebody, I'm just going to say that, then when you find somebody of substance who don't want you for your money, you don't want them, because now you know that you have to show up in a different way, because what you thought they needed, they do not need from you. And now you don't know how to show up in any other way because you haven't really healed and dealt with yourself. Okay. And then you end up back with somebody who what? Wants you for your money. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what a secret does. The secret pulls down everyone, your children, everybody you come in contact with, your friend, everybody is hurt. Everybody was hurt at some form or fashion, and even the ones who didn't know it. Because that young girl who again decided that she was tired of being poor, tired of busting tables, she gonna go get with this married man to get some money. She doesn't even realize the hurt, pain, and trauma that she's causing everybody else. Because now that she's been exposed, she's exposing everybody else, everybody that she comes in contact with. So the next thing, what you refuse to heal, you will repeat itself through your bloodline until somebody decides to end it. When I stepped back and looked at the full picture of the series, I realized, it really wasn't about polygamy. It's about what happens generation after generation of people making decisions from unhealed places. Every character was operating from something broken inside of them, right? We talked about this: the lust, revenge, greed, rejection, perfectionism, right? The desperate need to feel chosen. That perfectionism that lived in Joyce was because she grew up with a very prominent family, okay? An image meant something, all right? The desperate need to feel chosen. Choose me, the mistress. I choose me. Leave her, me. The fear of what other people think. Choose me, the daughter. Choose me. Choose me over the kids that live in the house with you. And not one of those things stayed with the individual who carried it. Even Essie living out her lust. Somebody got to come over here and please me. Now she's with this young kid with guns in her house. Don't even know what that. And look what happened even with her son. Every single one of them spread every single. Let me tell you what. Every single broken thing spread through the entire family. Every single one of them. And it touched people who actually had no part in creating the original wound. Think about it. It touched the children. They didn't create that original wound. That came from their mother and their father. The innocent children, the twins, their mother up and left them. She said, I got to start all over. I got to go find me another man. Because Lord help me if I can do it on my own. Right? I'm not downing her. I understand that's a part of her trauma response. Maybe she grew up with somebody who told her you need a man. You can't make it without him. You can't raise these kids on your own. You can't do it. Okay? Now look what's going to happen with her children. But that's exactly how these generational cycles work. What you do not acknowledge gets repeated. What you do not repair gets repeated. What you do not surrender and lay at the altar to God continually moves through your bloodline, showing up in your children's relationships, in your grandchildren's choices, in patterns that nobody can explain because nobody ever went back far enough to find the source. There's prayers that I pray to break and bind covenants that I didn't make, that was made in my family lineage long before me. That's for my believers. You got to break it at the root. Some covenants your ancestors made. I ain't make that covenant, and I ain't about to live with it. You got to bind that thing and break that thing. And it gets to start with you. I said it earlier. What happened to you as a child is not your fault. And once you become an adult, it's your responsibility to heal it. You don't have to keep dragging that thing on. You don't have to keep hurting. You can leave a legacy of love, peace, joy, happiness, and financial stability. You can leave it. You know how I know? Because that's what I work on every single day. Am I perfect in it? No. But like I said to you, perfectionism doesn't exist. And I realized that I used to suffer from perfectionism because of fear. Fear of not being chosen, fear of not being seen, fear of not being recognized. Honey, I am over it. And I had to go through some really hard heartbreak and heartache to get to this point. And I realized not everybody has to go through that. That was my voyage. But now I got it. If you go back and listen to some of the things I talk about this year, the things that I had went through and suffered through and learned about myself, honey, there is no going back. I decided that I want these things to break with me. Now I realize that my children are older. They're now in their 20s and 30s. So there are some things that they got, and I want them to watch me work through healing it now. Why? Because I want them to see that they can heal it too. It doesn't have to continue on with them. They don't have to do the things the way I did it. They don't have to do it the way their father did it. And I'm talking about the bad. Now, there's some good things about us. Now, let's not get that twisted. Okay, continue on that good stuff. There are some beautiful things about how I always love to learn and grow. And people talk. Talked about having two therapists. I don't have two anymore. I graduated. Sometimes you graduate from a therapist, and I graduated once I worked through this healing of this last thing that I went through. I had a black male therapist. He helped me walk through and see some things, some patterns, some habits, and things that was in me that I needed to break so that I don't take forward into the next relationship. But this is why these things are important. Once you start to break them, right? People around you, your children, your family, then they'll get to see they can break these things too. You cannot go back to the past and fix it and heal it. And you can do it right now in the present. Take the present moment to look at the patterns, the habits, the secrets and lies, the places are that you are still hurt. Give up every piece of that anger, that bitterness, that unforgiveness. I'm telling you, the more you hold on to it, the more you're locked in the prison with that person. When you say that, I don't trust nobody, or I'm not going to know new friends, what you're saying is you're locked in the prison with your old friends. What you're saying is, I'm not trusting any men anymore. Men. You're locked in the prison with those men who hurt you. When you're saying, I don't trust women anymore, but you're locked in the prison with those women. Every time you hold on, you're locked in the prison. That same thing you hate about your mother and your father, guess what? You locked in the prison to it. Because that's the thing that fuels you and pushes you forward. That thing. That thing. So you're locked with the same people that you hate forever. And now you're bitter, you're angry. And you're not living the life that's you're meant to live because you're still holding on. And so I know you're saying, well, how do I let go? This is why I'm saying if you decide to be the one to end it, you may have to be the one to go to therapy. You're gonna have to be the one to have the hard conversations that you've been avoiding for years. You may need to forgive somebody that believes, listen, that you believe don't deserve it. I'm not escaping the fact that these people hurt me and brought harm to me. Absolutely not. Do I feel that they deserve forgiveness? Sometimes, maybe not, but it's not about them. It's about that I've decided I'm not going to live in a prison with them for the rest of my life. I am going to be a wife. I'm going to have a thriving business. I am going to be a better mother. I am going to become the woman that I've decided I'm become. I am a wealthy, powerful, and intuitive leader. That is who I am. And so I'm going to walk that thing out. That is the decision that I have made. And so because I made that, I'm not pretending that I'm fine. You got to stop pretending that you're fine and admit that you're not and get yourself the help you need. I talked about this before. Therapy is not as expensive as it used to be. There's a program that's called Grow Therapy. You can get it on a sliding scale. There are so many ways out here that you can get help. There are no more excuses that you can have as an adult to live the way you live, keep hurting the way you hurt, and avoiding and abandoning and rejecting people all over the place, all because you are suffering from a father and a mother wound of abandonment, rejection, not being heard. So why do most people avoid? Because when they were growing up, they weren't heard. And so now they avoid. You know what I'm saying? So you got to go back to why I operate the way that I do. I had to go back so that I can live presently so that my future could look different. That's how you change the legacy. That's how you do it. Healing is the most courageous decision a person can make. And it's not easy, but you can do it because when you choose to heal, you are choosing not just to change your life, you are changing everyone that comes into contact with you. I am so grateful and thankful today that I took these steps because now I get to be even having this talking through this video with you today so that you can have a different life. It could become a different way. And I know that this was a fictional Netflix series, but the principles are anything but fictional. Every day there are families being destroyed by lust and greed. Every single day families are being destroyed by revenge. Every single day families are being destroyed by trauma and old drama. Every single day families are being destroyed by pride and ego. Every day there are men and women chasing someone else's life while neglecting the one that God gave them. Every day, there are children carrying wounds they never created because the adults around them refuse to heal with their and make it their own. And then when their kid grows up and they say certain things, they like, oh, they don't want to take accountability, but you got to. I had to take accountability. Let me tell you something. One of my daughter's child, that will give me some attitude. Do you hear me? And I got to take accountability. I know where it comes from. I know where it comes from. They watch me do it. They watch me have an attitude. Okay. Now, does it mean I have to accept disrespect? Absolutely not, and will not. And it's also about recognition. But I also recognize that if I can work through it and change, so can they. And so I don't speak death over them. I speak life. I speak prosperity. I speak success. I know that every single one of my children have the heart of God and they're beautiful beings. And so I just keep praying that. God, they're God's children anyway. I was just the guide to get him there, get them here, and help facilitate some of their journey. They are God's children. So I pray to God that because he has some very specific promises for their life, that he brings it to pass. That's what I do. And the beautiful thing about God is that no matter what has been passed down to you, it does not have to be what you pass down to people who come after you. It doesn't. That's the beautiful thing about walking with a firm foundation of believing in God and building that. It's so beautiful. It wasn't always like this for me, but the reason why I can speak to the beauty of it now is because I'm walking this thing out. And so maybe you inherited, anger, addiction, lust, greed, infidelity, perfectionism, people pleasing, child. My mother was the one that, my mother was something to be reckoned with. Let's not get that twisted. But she was always there for everybody. Always, when people called, she would come, always helping. But it built something, in her. And so I had that. And then I had to slow down for a minute and say, wait a minute, here I am running to help everybody, giving away everything out of my pocket. And now I have nothing. I don't have a savings. I don't no, that's poverty mindset. And I refuse to be impoverished in my mind. I refuse to be broke in my mind, my spirit, my heart, and in my finances. You understand me? I had to unlearn some things. But whatever it is, you do not have to continue it. The greatest inheritance you will ever leave is not money or a house or a title, business, or reputation. It is the healed version of yourself. That is the best inheritance. The greatest inheritance is the healed version of yourself. Because one person, listen, because when one person decides to stop blaming and hiding and pretending and finally do the work that healing requires, the entire bloodline can change. And I believe my entire bloodline has changed and will continue to change because I'm going to continue to step into this thing. I cry a lot more than most people know, but I don't care what it takes, that I'm going to leave this legacy of love, health, healing, joy, prosperity, happiness, and wealth. It takes a lot out of you when you are the one to make that decision. But I've made it, and listen, and I'm not going alone. Okay, I need my firm foundation of God because it keeps me grounded when everybody else leaves and walk away and do whatever it is that people are going to do. Because just like God has people, the enemy has people too. So all the peoples is coming. Okay, so you got to discern between who is who. Sometimes you get the discernment right, sometimes you don't. But what you don't have to do is sit in it. You don't have to stay in it. What you can do is go heal it. I tell you all the time, I built a system of success around me. That means I have a therapist, I have a mentor. I'm getting ready to hire me a new coach. I have 2 communities that I am. Why? Because I understand that God has people and the enemy has people. And if you want to stay sane while you're walking through this journey that the enemy does not want you to walk through of healing and joy and love, you think the enemy wants you to come together. This is why I want my black families, my black men and women that hear me so well. He don't want y'all to come together. This thing that y'all sitting on these airwaves saying about one another, oh, you know who rejoicing in that? It's not God. It is the enemy. Because let me tell you something that he'll understand. When we come together, oh, stop letting the enemy win. When we come together, it is a powerhouse. You know why? We can change this world. It takes, listen, what one can do with 2, come on, man. I'm just telling you, there is something powerful about that dynamic. But you'll listen to these hurt people who won't go get the healing and won't go get the hope. So I don't need anybody. It's a lie. It comes from the enemy. We need one another. If not, there would be no need to populate the earth. There is a need for many things. Every single bug that's in this earth, you may think we don't need them, but they're killing something we don't even know about. We need one another. It is a lie. And we need the healed version of ourselves. I know it's not easy when you're bringing two people for two different backgrounds. And listen, this is why it's okay to go to, listen, after you decide you're going to date and you're going to be serious about each other, go to date in couples counseling. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't listen to the world and tell you how to do your relationship. It don't have to look like everybody else. You can have peace, Lord. You ain't got to have all that trauma and drama. That doesn't mean we're not going to go through things. We will, because if as a people, we continue to grow and elevate for sure. But stop letting the enemy eat your legacy. Lust will kill your legacy. Lust will kill your legacy. How do I know? Because lust will have you here, there, and everywhere, populating children over here, populating children over there, doing all these things. Now I got 3, 4, 5, 6 different children's fathers, all this mix up, all this mess. I'm telling you, it will kill your legacy. And then for the men, they talking about, oh, they blame it on the woman because they don't have no money. No, your lust killed that because you did not wrap up. You did not say, you know what, I'm not going to fall victim to my flesh and be sleeping with this woman and that woman, all because I don't want to deal with my mother wound. The truth of the matter is I have a mother wound that I've never dealt with. So here I am sleeping with all these women. And then you don't realize when you come out of there, the reason why you don't feel anything and it still feels dark in there and it's not fulfilling is because it's not in her. It is something that you're going to have to work through with you. And it's the same thing with my women. You letting all these men into you, all the spirits that they've been with, and you wonder why you don't feel healthy and you feel stressed out and you feel depressed. You got to be mindful out here. So we need the healed version of ourselves. Stop with this. I don't need no new friends. The reason why my retreat was successful is because new people enter my life. That's your trauma speaking. We got to have discernment for sure. But we got to kill this because the enemy is killing our legacy. It is killing our legacy. I love y'all, so I'm gonna come here and tell y'all the truth. That show really opened up my eyes to a lot of things. When we refuse to heal, we repeat, and we have to have courage to heal. We can no longer pass down this trauma of separatism and breaking our families apart. It is a time for all of us to come into healing, come into alignment with what God has for us. I'm telling you right now, when you come into alignment with the right people at the right time for what's for you, there is nothing in this world that can stop you, but it starts with you. Okay. I love you. I hope you have the most amazing day. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Share this with someone that you know is going to help them. Even if you don't know it's going to help them, share it with them anyway. I love you, and I'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye now.